I guess there's still some more relatively near-term questions, right? Especially as we think about sending humans, not just robots, to Mars. And this is going to be the focus of my talk. From space to street, autonomy lessons from deep space human missions. This is a talk focused on the challenges, particularly on the communication challenges, both delays and blackouts that a crew will have to deal during a mission to Mars. In delays, we're talking about 20 minutes each way on average, and also like being able to be weeks without no contact from Earth. So the lack of real-time communication from Earth calls from developing a set of integrated technologies that can ensure that the crew can effectively respond to onboard situations on their own. So in this presentation, I'm going to be covering our early progress as the Earth independent projects. I'm glad to see my project manager here, Andres Martinez. And we've been starting to develop this sort of integrated hardware and software technologies to reduce the risk for crewed Mars missions. This is obviously a year-long project. We don't think that we're ready by next year, as Elon Musk wants us to go, but it's something that we're working towards. And I think the role of NASA is key here for even for commercial exploration. So to set the challenge, long duration missions to Mars will last an order of 3 years. That's with no evacuation. After the first 3 to 4 weeks, it would take about a year to come back. No resupply during transit. During those 9 months, we're using current propulsion and can't top up along the way. So everything is moving relative to everything else. So meeting with another vehicle, for example, or slowing down and speeding up costs too much and would be unavailable. And then a small crew, which will have delayed support from ground. So you probably only have maybe like a handful of people on board. And then you will have the support from ground that we will be in the order of 1 hour to get back to you. So 20 minutes out, 20 minutes back, and around 15 minutes to get to process the query. So the crew will face with all these new issues. We'll be facing things that we never faced before. We have the experience from shuttle, ISS, or even Apollo. But in those cases, we only have 1.5 seconds of latency, so not much. And there was actually a possibility to evacuate, right? Mars, you don't have that. So this first chart on the top, here's analysis of significant incidents in vehicle systems requiring immediate response, or IFI. We counted 68 total high priority IFIs, which means items for investigation. And out of those 68, 33 were the kind where if we hadn't thrown the entire ground team at them, we probably would have lost the crew or even the vehicle. So that works out to around 1.7, on average, 1.7 events per year. But we can also notice that at least at the beginning, the first years, we had even higher, right? I think around maybe like 4 to 5 average per year, right? So as the technology matures and we solve some problems, there's always really going to be like a path where little by little we'll start doing better, right? This chart right here, class 2 alarms are means that the crew or ground has to act immediately to avoid injury, death, or serious station damage. So through 2019, we logged 660 of those, or about 29 a year, or 1 every 12 days. Most of them turn out to be false or minor only because Houston resolves them in real time, but Mars crew won't get that luxury. And then the little chart right here, it's from Apollo missions. What we see is that even though the longest Apollo flight was only 12 days, we still saw about 3 major anomalies per mission, as you can see. And that's because of docking, undocking, landing, surface operations, which add obviously more complexity, right? So the key takeaway with this slide is that ISS numbers are already a conservative picture with what we will face on Mars. We'll make more complex operations as Apollo did, or stretch them to 9 months as Mars transit does. And the odds of a life-threatening surprise go essentially to 100%. These two documents, the one on the left and the one on the right, they all show a very disturbing 40% number. Let me clarify. The one on the left is a study from the National Transportation Safety Board from 2013, Peak Performance-Based Operations Review, which says that over 40% of failure modes were unanticipated by designers. In those cases, the pilots had no checklist. They had to rely purely on knowledge, skills, and airmanship to keep the airplane shape. Now, on the right side, we have a report from the NASA Engineering and Safety Center Bulletin from 2023, which says that 40% of software errors were due to the absence of code, meaning the mission never wrote any logic to handle those situations because no one thought it could happen. So aviation or space software, completely different domains, yet the same 40% hole. What that tells us is that the traditional rule-based approach that we've been following for many years only covers the other 60%. The missing 40% are the cases that we never imagined, at least on the design side. The good news is that they are not unknown unknowns, but rather they're unknown knowns. That is, the clues are sitting in our data, on telemetry data, but you mustn't see the pattern in time. So our job is to protect, on this project, is to try to close that 40% gap by bringing machine learning big data on board. Right now, if you look at how we keep the ISS safe, you're talking about roughly 70 flight controllers on deck, spread around 3 times 8-hour shifts. So in the front room, Mission Control Center, Houston Flight Control Room, plus the multi-purpose support rooms, you have 50 plus operators on console, literally staring at data, another 20 plus specialists on call, and that group alone carries around 500 years on console experience, 600 plus years of relevant experience when you add previous jobs. And 80 plus of them have at least 1 degree in engineering, more than half hold aeroastro degrees. And now, if you go into the back room, which is called the Mission Evaluation Room on MER, we have there 30 plus engineers on console, which contributes around 161 years on console time and another 556 years of domain experience. With this slide, what we're trying to show is that the gap that we have to close, right? Currently, with that large team that supports ground, how is it going to look when you go to Mars, when you don't have that luxury, right? Mission Control has tried for decades to shape that number of getting below 70, but it actually has been nearly impossible, right? We always have to have people on deck. So our prayer goal is to try to shrink that, not just to 0, but into something that the vehicle can query, like transfer some of those decision-making on board, and then rely for issues that don't require that much urgency, right? That can be resolved later. Here we just lay out our approach in the Earth Independent Operations Project. There are really 3 parts to what Mission Control does in real time, and the crew will have to absorb them at Mars. First is situational awareness. Simply become aware that something is wrong. How do we do now? We park a room full of people in front of telemetry screens. We can't assume 4 astronauts will stare at gauges all day, for example. So we need an onboard way to surface the problems to them, right? Human-computer interaction is always something very important. Anomalies response, that's the assess and analyze loop, right? So why is it happening? Can I pull more data? Could it be this? Let me try this. Let me try that. It's a classic troubleshooting, right? So I'm not chasing perfect root cause, because what I'm trying to do is stabilize and then buy time to figure out the issue. And then we have procedure execution, really, which is actually doing the fix, right? And sometimes it's a fix that we never wrote a procedure for. So maybe we never thought that we'll have to pull that box, or maybe there's no software code yet, right? So the crew has to improvise and then test, is this resolved? Those 3, situational awareness, anomaly response, procedure execution, are everything the ground does minute to minute today. So the ground can keep doing the slow and burn stuff, mission planning, longer term analysis, but these real-time actions have to move on board because the ready loop is just going to be too slow. It's impossible. And now here's what we actually need on board if the crew is going to handle those time-critical unknown knowns, right? We have onboard analytics, which is real-time telemetry analytics that can do diagnosis the moment that a signal changes. So we're talking large data analytics, machine learning, running locally, not in Houston. Then we have integration of statistical and rule-based AI. So statistical here means also machine learning, patterns that were never wrote down, fuse them with traditional rule-based. So it's not like completely replace it with a neural network yet. And then physics models that we already trust, like safety obviously is a huge concern in these cases. Real-time AI analysis with crew input. Think of the astronauts as roaming sensors and hypothesis generation. The AI can help refine. I mean, we see nowadays with large language models can help you, surface problems, surface information, and at the same time help you maybe reason out of the problem. And then obviously, you're going to have some sort of visualization, right? And that's always important. So the crew can actually find and understand what the algorithms are saying, and also including the ability to inhibit the autonomy if it starts doing something that this is possible, of course. So the guiding idea is simple. Humans and models succeed and fail in very different ways. And the powers comes from putting the two together. So each one catches, the other misses. And this graphic here shows who actually responds and where the data live as we move from ISS to Mars missions, right? On ISS today, here, the crew do very little. See that tiny orange band right here? The ground does almost everything. The big gray bar is all of this mission control right now. What we have on board is classic FDIR and a handful of preloaded responses, just in case. Around the moon here, we see, the crew will have a little more time, but we'll ship more preloaded responses, some automated FDIRs, maybe an auto FMEA. But Houston is still in real time, so it's always in the loop. Majority of the responses are going to come from the ground. At Mars, the ground's going to be delayed. They will be able to do much less. So the crew response block has to balloon. So that's why we see the orange section expanding. And we're going to want a lot more out of the vehicle systems themselves, independent of the crew. So the dashes here on the right side marks the extra capability of autonomy that must fill in because of this latency, issues with like not getting real-time blackouts, and because it's too slow, the latency, right? So the take elements to fill in that box would be, we're going to have our physics-based models. We're going to have our data-driven machine learning methods, Kalman filter, rule-based AI, and all the sensors technologies, recommender tools, all the crew interaction approaches. That stack is how we can close that gap between what we handle in today and the future, what we handle at Houston today and future Mars missions. So this is the last slide. This is just a summary of what I touched. Crew sensors. We have the crew both as sensors and adaptive problem solvers, right? They can walk around, they can smell something, they can hear something. At least today, they're still better than robots. I mean, we still have maybe astrobees or like some free-flying robots helping out. And as the capability and autonomy expands, we think they're going to be even more important, right, to support crew. We are still going to have ground control on Earth, which will manage everything that is not urgent, right? If a slow burn issue or long range planning, Houston can still own it even with the light time. Then we're going to have onboard systems that will automate as much as we can and as much as is safely possible, right? And then we'll work with crew when possible as well to fix out the seizures, right? And then, yeah, we think also that we're leveraging some advances from this last decade, which makes things different than, Apollo era. Of course, sensor technology has advanced so quickly, lower the cost, much better. We're going to expect having a lot more data, which means we're going to need a lot more compute hardware, right? But thanks to Moore's law, we've seen also declining in computing. You obviously still have the issue of like, not everything that works here works on a space, but they're already like HPSC, they're already like some initiatives, what we hear early from Dennis, for example. And then obviously the big component, AI, machine learning, right? Since the 2012 convolutional neural network moment and then 2017 transformer moment, now we can mine and we can make more sense of the data as we never had that option before. With that, thank you, everyone. I'll let Tela.